Well, it's nice to see everybody here today, and I think it's a terrific opportunity. We get to sort of pick the brain of somebody who has a long track record in business, extremely successful, and maybe to share some of the insights about what you've learned over a multi-year career, Kevin. So great to have you here in Vancouver.
Thank you, Michael, very much. And I think it's a good thing to do. I think anybody that's achieved any form of success as an entrepreneur owes the next generation their secrets, what they've learned that works and what they learned doesn't work. That's actually more important sometimes.
Well, I'm trying to think, you started Softkey when you were about 21 years old, and your mother gave you $10,000 in seed capital. I'm trying to imagine that scene. Did you put her through the same, or did she put you through the same ringer you do with people on Dragon's Den?
Thank goodness, no. She was very kind. You know, I was basically going out of business. I couldn't make payroll, and I asked her for that. My brother also chipped in. I have to say now, in retrospect, it was the best investment they ever made, but they wouldn't have known that at their time.
Well, that leaves me. What part of the company did she get?
Well, I asked her for a discount at the end, you know, but really she helped me and saved me, and I think I owe that to my children too in some ways, but I think there's an important lesson in life about what it means, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs miss this. I certainly don't anymore. Cash is everything when you're a startup, and if you have to fire your brother to keep your business going, you do that, because when you run out of money, you're dead. That's it.
What was the best advice your mother ever gave you?
She said to me, it's more important to understand your weaknesses than your strengths, which I have lived with the rest of my life. It's the most absolute important element to being an entrepreneur, because most entrepreneurs will tell you that they're good at everything, that they have an ego and they have a vision and they know what they're doing. That's always not correct. Every individual has major weaknesses in what is their constitution. And great entrepreneurs are able to find partners that supplement those weaknesses with strengths. And I'll give you a great example. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak created the most valuable company in the S&P today. They are the antithesis of each other, and for a while didn't even like each other, but they needed each other. And that is what makes a great team and great entrepreneurs.
When you started off Softkey, I'm trying to think, what did you bring to that project? I mean, was it a tech kind of expertise? Was it the marketing expertise? All of what you're saying, you should know what you're good at and what you're going to need help with.
You know, I was working as a television producer in the genesis of that story, and I'll tell you something very interesting. I was a bit of a hobbyist with early computers. One was called an Osborne. It was a CPM machine, and there was a user group that would gather at a library on Wednesday nights, and one day, I was actually working for Hockey Night in Canada. I was one of those producers that made those intermission shows like Don Cherry's Grapevine, Bob Orr and the Hockey Legend, the original six. And we used to do a lot of graphics. And it was a real headache to go get the graphics done, because we only had 5 days to make the show. And it was always the bane of getting the show done. And one day I showed up at one of these user meetings, and this guy named John Freeman, who was working as an oil executive at Suncor, had developed a software product that drove a plotter out from Osborne, and I saw him do graphics for his presentations to his board. He did, in a matter of seconds, what it took me 4 hours to do on Hockey Night in Canada. And I looked at it and I said, Eureka, this is huge. And I went over to him and I said, listen, John, I want to buy your software. And he said, I don't want to sell it. I said, well, how about we go 50-50 and I'll make you rich? And he looked at me and he said, who the hell are you?
Yeah.
I'm a sales and marketing guy, and when I see an opportunity, it's a visceral experience for me, and that's what happened that evening. That was the genesis of Softkey. Today, John is a very wealthy man, and so is everybody else that was involved in that organization, but it started that moment, to see that opportunity. Great opportunities are always ideas that solve problems.
But it's interesting also, though, it came out of your background. You know, Peter Lynch talked about the famous investor, you know, from the Magellan funds, always talked about invest in businesses you understand.
Yes.
You know, and Warren Buffett talks an awful lot about that, which is why he hasn't been in the tech field, you know, himself. And then that sounds like the same thing, too, is where you say, hey, I get this product. I'm a user. I'm one of the people, and there's huge potential for it.
Well, Michael, you're precisely right. I mean, I got it right away, and I thought, if it solves it for me, it will solve it for millions of people all around the world, and I want to sell it to them.
Mm-hmm. Everybody here knows that, you know, there's a huge fallout rate of businesses in their first 5 years. They don't succeed. The numbers are like 80% fail in the first 5 years. What did you people learn, and what did you do right in those 5 years so you weren't one of those negative statistics?
I think everybody faces the dark abyss in a business because poo-poo happens. You have to be ready every morning to get up to face the onslaught that's going to hit you. And some of the things I've learned as being an entrepreneur is this concept, and I warn everybody about this, of a balanced life is foolhardy. There is no balance when you're running a business. There's only the business. So if you're planning on getting married or you want to spend time with your dog or your kids or go to the hockey game, to hell with all of that. That's not going to happen. The whole reason to be an entrepreneur is not to get rich, it's to become free. That's what I was pursuing, is freedom. What is wealth? It's freedom. It's to be able to do anything you want, anytime you want, not answer the phone if you don't want, go anywhere you'd like, do anything. That's the pursuit and why entrepreneurs have such drive. And if you want to be free, you have to give up everything first. Then one day, you'll be really free.
It reminds me of those sort of cosmos questions, how do you know when? How do you know if you're an entrepreneur? I mean, one of the first things you said to us here is know what your skills are and that kind of set. What are the other characteristics, though, if you said, man, if you're not like this, as you just said, if you're not willing to dedicate yourself, focus, 100% in your enterprise, don't even bother starting.
I think you know you're an entrepreneur when you love your business more than your girlfriend.
It's taking a tremendous amount of constraint not to comment on that. One of the things that's also interesting for a small company like Softkey as it was growing is that you already looked to acquisitions, that I just find fascinating. And I mean, how did that come about? Your first acquisition, you would have, maybe another person would have said, we're not big enough yet to try this.
What I've learned is it's better to actually combine than to compete. So if you have a competitor that's eating share, go to them and say, how about I just buy you and get rid of them and put them out of business effectively and get their services and products and their people. I did over 100 deals during the 10 years that we were running Softkey and the Learning Company, and it got to the point where I would acquire a company and we didn't need any of their marketing or salespeople, we just needed their technology. I'd fire everybody the next morning, and then a week later I'd buy another company and I recognized some guy I fired last week working, and so I was whacking the same guy 3 times a month. By the way, that doesn't bother me at all. It's just the Darwinian forces of what happens. But we rolled up that entire sector. We ended up owning about 70% market share in educational software for math and reading, and it worked.
Let me just backtrack on that then. So your goal was to just, as you say, and I hear it loud and clear, eliminate the competition, you're more powerful, become the player in that marketplace. Was that a stated goal sort of before you started those acquisitions? You said, you know what, this is how we're going to grow. We're not going to necessarily do it internally. We're going to look and see what opportunities there are in the market.
My view of business is it's war. And you're not trying to make friends, you're trying to make money for the shareholders who risk their capital. During my tenure there, I wanted all my competitors to know, I wanted them to fear us, that if we made a move in their sector, they were going to die. It was that simple. We were going to pour boiling oil on them, we were going to salt the earth where they had their offices, we were going to wipe them out of retail, and we were dead serious about it all of the time.
And you're not even Sicilian.
I think that's how you have to run a business. I think we've gone way too far in the pendulum of being socially responsible. I'm about making money for shareholders. That's what matters. I don't care about anything else.
What was the key acquisition you made? Was there a point where you said, okay, now we're there?
There was a company called Broderbund, which was our largest competitor, and I went to see them on a friendly basis and suggested a combination in a hotel in San Francisco. And the CEO there, who didn't own any stock, insulted me in the room, and he said, I would never combine with you. You make schlocky software. And I said, you don't own any of your company. You're an employee, and very soon I'm going to fire you. And that's how we left the room. And that's exactly what happened.
We mentioned in the introduction the Mattel purchase, and how did that come about? I'm just interested. $3.7 billion phone calls don't happen all the time. So how did that come about? Were you out looking, or were they, obviously they were looking, but...
I'm just a salesman, and I know one thing. If you want the best price, you need 2 buyers. So the minute Hasbro approached me, there was a director that called me up in Boston and said, can you come out to the Grill 23 tonight? I'd like to talk to you about this industry you're in. I'd like to get a feel for what you know about it. And I knew that was code for I want to buy you. It was only seconds later I picked up the phone and made sure our bankers called Mattel. because I knew we needed the two competitors going at us to get the top price. You always need that. You always need two buyers. If you're selling a business, make sure you have two buyers, because without that, you will never get the premium price.
And that's what I wanted to ask about, getting the premium price. So that's one huge strategy. I hope everybody heard loud and clear there. What about preparing your company to be sold? Are there things that you should do so you know that you're maximizing the value before you get a bidding war going?
My attitude about that is you don't know when that's going to happen. The key to success in making a successful company is return of equity and capital to shareholders. So if you're running your business to take care of your shareholders always, you're creating a very valuable entity that someone else is going to want to buy, because when you do something like that, you look at the highest margins, you try and generate the most cash flow, pay the most dividends, whatever your strategy is. Myopic focus on shareholder returns, to me, is the only thing that matters.
I mean, you did that with the learning company, but you also did it with Storage Now, where you got bought out. When you are starting up a company, or you're operating a company, do you always do it with an eye to getting that exit strategy?
Well, I'm a consolidator, so in the storage business, I recognized with several partners that this was a very fragmented industry of storage operators, even in this city and right across the country, that had one or two facilities. These are places where you have climate-controlled storage, and people put everything from their art to their pianos or whatever. I love that space because it's a real estate play. It had great cash flow. So my attitude was, let's go buy everybody. Let's just make hundreds of offers, have the same discipline in each case, and then once we acquire it, use our operational skills to optimize cash flows. Now, there was another group that started at the same time, and it came down to a showdown at the OK Corral. I met with the guy in a classic, let's have a glass of wine at the Four Seasons in Toronto, and I said, listen, this is going to end one of two ways. I'm buying you, or you're buying me. Now, if we're not going to do that, I am going to make your life hell on earth by making you overpay for everything you bid on, because we were both trying to buy facilities. There was always two bids. I said, wherever you go, I'm there, and you're going to pay 30% more every single time. Now, we understand each other. What do you want to do? He bought me.
Interesting.
Wonderful outcome. Wonderful outcome.
Yeah. Let me just summarize a little bit about this. And I mean, it's always difficult. I always think that's sort of the Barbara Walters in me. I'm channeling Barbara Walters. Decades in business, can you sum up maybe 1, 2, 3 of the biggest lessons so people walk out of here and they know this is what you've learned about doing business? One, as you said, it's about the money, about focusing on making it a successful business, a profitable business. Others come to mind?
I'll summarize it this way, and I teach this now when I teach young people in school, because I think I'm trying to teach my lessons. Remember, it's coming from the perspective of, I'm slightly right-wing of Attila the Hun. So, and if you don't agree with me, I don't care. That's the way I look at it.
I remember that election with Attila. You said, I'm not voting for that lefty.
So, my attitude is, look, this is what my truths are. So, in terms of what I've learned in business is, you have to make money all of the time. That's what matters. You have to get up in the morning and make tough decisions, and you can't care about people's feelings. It just doesn't matter. Because in the end, a business, the DNA of a business is to make money. It's not to be a charity. It's not to be socially responsible. It's not to make people feel warm and fuzzy about where they're working. That's all crap. What matters is you have to make money. And if you remember that, you'll be very, very successful. People may not like you. Who cares? You're getting free, and you're making your employees that are shareholders rich. I love it when an employee came up to me once at a learning company and said to me, Kevin, you're an absolute bastard, and I love you. Because that person was getting married, owned shares, and was getting wealthy. I said, you brought a tear to my eye. And that's exactly what I want. I want you to understand, when you come here to work and become rich, not any other reason.
What about management of that, then? I mean, that begs a management philosophy, sort of legendary with Jim Pattison out here, as you fire the worst salesman or the lowest producing salesman every month, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've built many businesses, and I think all my employees would say, look, I may not like the guy, but I respect him, and I trust him, and I know what he wants to do. And, if you really value somebody in a business, you're going to give them equity because you think they can help you achieve your goals, and then you're dragging them through the process of becoming wealthy. You don't get rich focusing on money. You get rich falling in love with a business that all of a sudden becomes successful and somebody wants to buy it from you. I think people should understand that their leader is myopically focused on making money. And if you don't like that environment, don't work for me. I couldn't care less.
You just mentioned, and I know my son is at Ryerson University in Toronto, and you lectured for him in the second-year entrepreneur class there. And, the Richard Ivey School of Business, of course, you're on the board there. What are you telling younger people, who are starting a career or just about to start a career, where the opportunities are, and, pick a time frame, 10 years out there? Or what kind of advice do you give in terms of that?
I'm telling young people today and luckily in Canada, we are not myopically focused. We don't look inward, we look outward. So, I travel the world today because I manage over $1.7 billion in assets, and I invest them globally. And when I go to Brazil, India, China, Asia, Cambodia, Thailand, these countries are on fire. Like, you can't even, if you go into a Cambodian call center, where, we remember Cambodia as a war-torn strife place, decades ago, the killing fields, all that story. That's not the country anymore. You find young men and women that are willing to work 20 hours a day, sacrifice their weekends, sacrifice their personal lives just to make 20% more. They'll sit in a call center, sleep under their desk, and get up in the morning. And we have to compete with these guys? You show me a teenager in this city that's going to work 20 hours a day and sleep under his desk. Not a chance in hell. I want to invest in those guys, not the fat and lazy guys here. That's the way I look at the world.